Hey everyone. So in this video, we'll talk a little bit about the method of markers. And this is the last of our fair division methods that we're going to explore in this course. So what is the method of markers? Method of markers deals with discrete assets. And if you'll recall what that means our assets are not something where you can pour, like a milkshake where you can pour some of it into another cup and share that. They're sort of indivisible um, items or units. So the common example to give for the method of markers is to give some candy. And the preliminaries for this setup, I'm just going to work through an example rather than sort of writing out the method and then working through it. The preliminaries are that we have a certain number of players. We have P1 through Pn players. We have n of them. And each player gets n minus 1 markers. These are called markers. Minus 1 markers to each player. And in this example, Um, I've labeled the players, I've labeled the markers uh, J1, J2, J3. So I'm going to say that my players in this example, let me move this down a tad. My players in this example uh, are going to be John, Wendy, Charles, and Sandra. Great. So I have 4 players, which means each player gets 3 markers according to this. And I've lined up all of the candy or the assets in a line. And the first step, so step 1 is bidding. And what it is, what each player has to do, we'll say one by one, is they have to choose how they want to divide up linearly or break up um, the candy so that they think that each part is a fair share. So let me explain. So John has these 3 markers. And he'll take his first marker and say, I really like M&Ms a lot, so certainly 2 M&Ms is fine with me, even if there's a candy corn mixed in, which he doesn't like, I hope. He likes jelly beans too, so he'll throw a second marker maybe here, and uh, his third marker he'll throw maybe right here. Okay. And what is John saying with these markers? What he's saying is that if he has this share, this share, this share, or this share, that any one of those 4 constitutes a fair share for John. He thinks that if he got any of those 4 um, parts of this pieces of 4 sets of pieces of candy, any one of them, that he would have a fair share. Great. So the markers split up the line of assets. Okay, Wendy goes and does the same thing. So Wendy is going to um, maybe put her marker down. She really likes candy corn a lot. Nobody knows why. And so, she doesn't really think much about anything else. So she's happy to have a candy corn. And one thing I want to say about these markers, they don't have to be, they can overlap. You can have them in the same kind of place where they're marking it. But yeah, she's all about the candy corn. Right. Um, Charles, Charles, he likes M&Ms. Or sorry, he likes jelly beans the most. So he'll put his here, and he doesn't really care about anything else. So he'll put this here, and then he'll make sure that he gets a jelly bean in here. And then Sandra will Nobody knows. Sandra's likes candy corns and M&Ms. So, but she really doesn't mind jelly beans either, so she'll put that in here. Well, we'll say candy corn and M. For some reason, Sandra's chosen this. All right. Now, so what do we do now? Well, actually, I'm going to make it so that Sandra checks here. So what do we do now? Well, what we do now is step 2. So this was step 1, it's bidding. It's each of the players just makes their mark on how they want to divide up the assets. The next step is allocation. 2 is allocation. And it's really not too bad. So, however, you kind of want to describe it step by step, step by step. But I'll put it down here because I'm a little worried about my room here. So the first thing we do is we find the first marker. Find the first of the first markers. Okay. So in this case, what are our first markers? Well, they're labeled by the ones. So we have Wendy's first marker, Sandra's, John's, and Charles's first markers. And we are going to find the first of all of the first markers. And that's Wendy. She has the first reading left to right. That's Wendy's. Okay, so in other words, this is what I mean by first. I'm going to go this direction. So the first of the first markers is Wendy's. So she's going to be the winner of that. Once I've chosen Wendy, or once I've chosen the first of the first, I'm going to disregard her subsequent markers. So I'm just going to remove them. So, and remove that player's later markers. That player's later or subsequent markers. Okay. So what do? I'm going to eliminate Wendy's second, Wendy's third. I don't need them. All right. Then what do I do next? I do the same step. I'll even copy it, even though my handwriting is atrocious here. Apologize for that. Oops. Let's not delete it. I'm going to duplicate it. And now, instead of finding the first of the first markers, I'm going to find the first of the second markers. Oops. So where are the second markers? The second markers are Sandra's, Charles, and John's. And the first reading left to right of the second markers is Sandra's. So I found Sandra's. That's the winner. Sandra has the first of the second markers. And I will again remove Sandra's subsequent markers. And there's just this one. I'll delete that. Great. What I can do twice, I can certainly do a third time. So I will do that, hopefully this time without deleting it. And I will find the first of the third markers. And again, this is really of the ones that remain because we're constantly removing some of the markers. So we find the first of the third markers, and it looks like the first of the third markers is a tie. So we have 2 markers in the same spot, and we can just flip a coin here. And I'll say that John is going to win that coin flip. Okay. And yes, I have to remove subsequent markers, but it doesn't matter. And in fact, at this stage, you could, well, you can remove the prior markers as well, but I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so now what do we do? Well, now we're still in the process of, so we found 3 of these markers, but we're still in the process of allocation. And what we do to allocate is the winner here, the winner of the first markers gets the beginning to first marker. The winner here gets their first marker to their second. The winner here gets their second marker to the third. And then, sorry, their third. And then where we're missing one player, we have only 3. There's one more. The remaining player gets their last marker to the end. Okay, so let me unpack this a little bit. What I mean here is what I'm saying, and so I'll circle it here in blue. So the first player, Wendy, gets from the beginning to their first marker. Sandra is the winner for the second part of the allocation. And so we see we go from Sandra's first to her second, and we allot that to Sandra. So I'm going to remove these extraneous markers. And I'll just say that this region, this goes to Sandra. So we'll just circle it all. And John was the winner of the third. So we get rid of Charles as second. Anything before that, we're going to remove. John was the winner of the third. And I'm just going to move Charles over, keep it in the same spot. So John is then going to get this portion from his second to his third marker. Right? And then the remaining player, which is Charles, gets from their last marker, which is right here, to the end. This is what Charles gets. So what you'll see is that these don't overlap, and that's because we've always chosen that next marker, and we've always chosen the first of that next marker. And that allows us to always kind of form this. But what you might notice, if you're looking closely enough, is that, I'm going to erase this a little bit. What you might notice is that there are these 2 pieces that are still there. Okay, so if we take these and we just actually divide them up, let's do that. So this is for John. This is for Sandra. I got a rim here, but let me label this as I go. This is John's, Sandra's, and okay, can erase this stuff. We've got Charles's here. And we've got Wendy's here. it's up at the top. We see that there are these two remaining pieces. Okay. And they didn't get divided up into anything. So these two pieces are called the surplus. And what you do with the surplus is you can do whatever you want. You can randomly, but typically what you do is you randomly rotate through the players and let them choose from the surplus until the surplus is gone. So this, though, gives us a fair division because, in a sense, you forced each player to make a choice. You forced every single one of these players to choose some kind of division of that line that they thought was fair. All right. So this is the method of markers. Let's see if we can't see maybe what might be a problem with this. Um, and then we'll move on to the next part. So what I did is I gave a very, very slimmed down method of markers. Okay, so I'm sorry, I think I've deleted my markers, so I'll make a couple of new ones here um, for John and Wendy. So here's one, and then we'll make one for Wendy as well. And I really only need to make one, right? Because I only have, in this particular setup, I only have two um, uh, people, and then I'm saying I want to divide up between the two. So I'll take John and Wendy. Great. Now I've taken the same candy, same set of candy, and I've divided it up into, I've lined it up. I've done my preliminaries really. But what I've also done is I've done sort of a value chart for these two individuals. So what happens here in this value chart is they both really like M&Ms. John can tolerate candy corn. I don't know. He was raised a certain way. Wendy can't abide by candy corn. I kind of relate to Wendy, to be honest. But they both have their value judgments. They both have their value systems for the assets. And what I want to point out about this is that we could be in one of these, we could take the same candy and we can split it up first, like we do here, and then how would they place their markers? Well, I think both of them would very sensibly, in this first lineup, put their markers right here. Because after all, if they're looking for a fair share, this divides those pieces of candy up pretty evenly, right? It's just the same grouping of candy on the left as on the right. So, I mean, it's a split down the middle. It's fair. So in this case, again, it's a coin flip. One John or Wendy would get one half. The other person would get the other half. And man, I don't know how you get it any more fair than that. They have the exact same division. However, when we take the same candy and we line it up in this way, John walks over and he says, well, I want to get 100, right? In this case, if I add up the values of these pieces of candy, I'm going to add up these values for John and I'll get 100. Or for Wendy, and I'd get 100. So this is 100 out of the 200. Well, not 200%, but it's really 50% of the whole. Now, if I wanted to reach that magic number of 100 for John, John would look and I say, okay, well, if M&M gets me to 75, the candy corn gets me 10, so that's 85, 95. Okay, so I need to go this far at least if I'm going to get 100. So John would say, okay, I'm going to place my marker here, because anything less than here, I get less than 100 on the left. Wendy, though, would go and look at the same kind of thing. And Wendy would say, okay, well, I've got 75 here. Candy corn, because it's so horrible, is worth 0. So this just adds no value at all to Wendy or to any reasonable person. And then M&Ms are another 75. So this is right, again, right where Wendy is like, all right, I'm going to need to put my marker right where John put their marker. And then you go and you flip a coin, and all of a sudden, let's say Wendy is the winner, and Wendy gets hers as the first marker. So Wendy now takes home this first part. This goes to Wendy, and this goes to John. And so what's the problem here? Well, Wendy, if we look at the value of her value system, Wendy got, 150 out of 200, or if you want, 75% of the value of the assets according to her, which is fine. I mean, that can happen. But if we look at poor John, John really got 15%. It definitely didn't get a whole 50%. So John really didn't get a fair share. And the reason John didn't get a fair share is because of the way it was ordered, that there was no real way for John to break it up according to their value system without dividing one of those pieces. So this has a lot to do with this sort of discrete asset part of this type of a problem and lining it up. But again, what's interesting to me about this is that that there is a very obvious fair solution, but when you kind of do something a little randomly, all of a sudden it will produce kind of unfair distributions of assets. Okay,